I still do, believe it or not. It's very, very awkward. It's very frustrating even at times, and scary. It depends on the day. There are days when you just feel emotionally connected, and other days when you're just like completely disconnected because you got too much going on upstairs. But one of the things that Blake said when we started this meeting was that we aim to be effective communicators. And when we think of effective communication in terms of Toastmasters, we think about a person standing up here at the front addressing an audience. But there's also that one-on-one conversation, which is equally important as, and sometimes even more important than the audience communication. So I want to do a role play exercise today, and I do have a partner. I'll introduce you in a moment. But I want to talk about 3 key reasons why effective communication, especially one-on-one, and why conversing with ease is so important. And the first thing is that we want to aim to establish rapport with a person. This is extremely important when you're setting up a conversation and moving forward. And how do we do that? We do that by discovering a common interest. And this is usually done by having some sort of open-ended question to lead the conversation. Not the yes or no's or the one-word answers. That's typically the thing that we lean to when we're a little bit awkward. But when we're first trying to get to know somebody, the best thing to do is ask open-ended questions which require a long answer. And sometimes silence is okay. I know that's a little awkward for some folks, but that tends to elicit additional communication from the person. The next thing is that we want to share personal experiences. This is often extremely difficult, especially for the guys in the room. We tend to be a lot more closed off when we're dealing with people. We're less emotional. We kind of keep it very logical. We don't know. We want to make sure we maintain the stature. I know that's difficult for a lot of men, but when you allow yourself to open and share personal experiences and truly learn to be authentic with the people that you're dealing with, it tends to, again, elicit the same thing in return from the other person. When you're comfortable enough to share, not always, but most often, they're also comfortable to share in return. And I mentioned being authentic. Be willing to go deeper with the person than you normally would. Be transparent. Allow them to see some things inside that you normally wouldn't be comfortable doing, and you never know where that conversation would go. So establish rapport. The next thing is to connect with people. Why is connecting with people important? We've often talked in here about leadership and the importance of leadership. But one of the things about leadership is it's purely influence. It's really nothing more, nothing less. It's all about influence. How do we establish influence with people? We establish influence with people by adding value to people. But the problem with adding value to people is you can't do such a thing unless you get to know what the person's desires, needs, wants are. And you do this by, once again, establishing rapport and thus establishing a connection with that person, driving the conversation and learning to discover the things that are going on inside their heart and mind so that you can then address and add value and gain influence with the person. And lastly, it enables you to build a strong inner circle as opposed to just a network. We think a lot about networking, right? Especially if you're in sales or that's your line of work. You require a large network of people to connect with. When I talk about inner circle, I'm talking about something that goes a little bit deeper. We think of network as more as kind of like acquaintances. I may know you, Suresh, and what you do and the general idea about what's going on in your life in terms of Toastmasters, but I don't really know if you have a family, what kind of struggles you have going on, how is the stuff going on in your personal life relevant to what's going on inside the office where you work, how does that drive some of your needs and desires personally and professionally inside the office, and then how can I then help you with that? It takes an inner circle. And one of the examples that I wanted to give you is Lawrence. You all know, most of you know Lawrence Henderson. He's part of this club. He and I are very, very close. We've developed a strong relationship in a very short period of time. And the main reason that happened is because the very first meeting with Lawrence began with a hug and some very, very deep conversations that took place after. It's to the point now where we actually meet up, and every time a major event or something exciting happens in our lives, he gives me a call. Hey, Dave, I got to tell you about something. Happens to me. Hey, Lawrence, I got to tell you about something. We're sharing things constantly, and I always see opportunities where I can help advance Lawrence or help him in whatever his cause, whatever he's trying to accomplish. And when I see those opportunities, I take them. But the important thing is that because I've established rapport, I've connected with them, I've been able to identify some of those needs and desires and act on those with the skills, talents, abilities that I have, the opportunities that are available. So that concludes the first part. The next part, I'm going to call up my friend Robert here, who I've never met before. And the reason that this is going to work well is because I have to, this is scenarios where I'm meeting a person for the first time, and I'm trying to practice conversing with a stranger. This is going to be extremely awkward for me because I have a bunch of people watching me. I'm warning you that ahead of time. But he's the perfect candidate because I don't know anything about Robert before today. So go ahead and start the clock. This is the, what did I think it said, 2 to 3? 2 to 3 minutes. 3 to 5 minutes. So this will be it. Yeah, thank you. 3 to 5 minute conversation with a complete stranger.
We got the whole deck cleared now.
Indeed. You want to have a it might be more comfortable for
Spotlight on there.
All right. So, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Well, turn towards me, Robert. That'll make it more awkward. So it's a pleasure to meet you, Robert, for the very first time. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Awesome.
How about yourself?
I'm doing awesome.
Good.
So I'm curious what brought you here to Toastmasters.
Yeah, for me, it's a lot of personal development. It's one of these areas that I've always felt that speaking publicly and as well as leadership, there's always opportunity to improve, and something that I really wanted to focus on, and it seemed like a really friendly and open environment to be at. So.
Awesome. I definitely think you've picked the right place.
Yep.
And leadership is definitely a hot topic in this room, I can tell you that. What drove you to have the desire to even want to get involved in such a thing? Because I know this is tough for a lot of people.
It's a great question. I think it's feedback from work, right, as well as just personally, as you mentioned, when you meet people, connecting more, meeting some strangers, how do you do that? And sometimes there's those awkward moments when you go back and reflect on it and say, hey, I really wanted to know this person better, but there's some awkwardness, and how do you overcome that and those sorts of things? So that's kind of what drove me.
I'd be curious if you'd be willing to share some specific examples, even how you've dealt with some awkward situations and even how you've overcome them, or maybe it's just a challenge and you want to figure out how.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking earlier to one of the other members here, and I was just at a conference not too long ago, and it was a whole group of people I've never met, right? And when you first arrive there, you don't know anybody, right? And I'm new to this organization, new to this group, so, you kind of go around and everyone's mingling together and they're all in different pockets. So, at first it's hard to kind of penetrate and find someone, but eventually, you get to meet someone, you don't have anything in common with what you actually do for work or why you're actually there. So you started talking more on a personal note. They ended up being from Atlanta as well, so we were able to connect, talk about the area. So I think for me it was, having, instead of that group discussion, having that personal discussion and kind of talking on a more personal level.
Yeah. Do you ever get nervous talking?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think, you never know how someone's going to respond or react, right? So it's overcoming that and saying, what is interesting to them as well as interesting to you. So.
That's cool. Yeah, I struggle. I really do. Sometimes when I'm sitting here chatting with people like yourself, I got a million things running through my mind. What can I ask them next? And one of the struggles that I know when conversing with other people is that you have to quiet the mind. It's really a focus on the other person. And I struggle with that because I'm so nervous about how ridiculous I might look that I'm often, my brain is racing, So I don't know. I'm curious what you think might be a good thing to focus on when you're dealing with those kinds of struggles.
Yeah, I think the big thing is just focusing maybe on kind of the basics, right? So anytime you meet someone, if you jump in too deep and you start asking too many personal questions, people can kind of get skittish. So I think if you're just asking kind of more generic, and then you see how they respond and react, and if there's so many interesting things that you're thinking of, maybe focus on one at a time and try to dive deeper into that, right? Okay. Because that's maybe what's going to help you connect with the person more than saying, hey, I know these 10 things, more superficial things. If you know one kind of deeper thing about a person, I think that can be more meaningful.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. What about, you got a family?
No, I do have a family, no children or no wife at the moment, yes.
Okay. You have a
But
family. You must have a family, right? Okay. Well, that's actually the end of our time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
It's nice meeting you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right, so I'll get it.
Thank you for having me up there.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I appreciate you having the courage to do that. That's awesome.
That was a great indoctrination, wasn't it? Really my favorite Frank.
All right, so for the next phase, this is 2 to 3 minutes. You can actually come back up, Robert.
Okay.
Come on,
We got lots of applause
for,
today.
for the last 2 to 3 minutes, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk back and forth with Robert and you, and we're just going to kind of do a group discussion about what in this conversation could have worked better, right? And you're going to help me with that, and Robert's going to help me with that, so that I can then improve. It's kind of think of it like a group evaluation. So, Robert, tell me, what is it that I did well in that conversation?
You know, for me, I felt like you were very engaging and interested towards me. Like you weren't talking about yourself a lot. You were to some degree, but you're saying you opened yourself up, made yourself vulnerable, and said, "I'd like to know more about you." And you were very receptive to what I was saying, versus saying, "This is about me. This is about me." So I thought that was very powerful.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Do you agree? Disagree? Go ahead.
I agree with Rob, and I would beg to say that it was not your first time meeting each other. As comfortable as you both looked up there, Dave, I thought you did a great job of telling exactly what the purpose was and just communicating freely for your first time meeting someone. You were very engaging. You were very attentive to what he was saying, and you were very you related different things to the conversation. So I thought you did a great job bringing those different pieces in for a first time conversation.
Okay. What could have gone better?
No, I need to think on that one. Maybe ask the audience first.
Okay.
Give me a chance to reflect.
Well, I will say that one of the things that went well, and I think it's a good tip for everyone, is that you had planned some questions in advance so that you knew what you were going to structure that conversation with. And I think that's a good tip and something that we should use going forward to, if you're in one of those situations, have a couple of questions prepared to help you start the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
What I liked about it, in particular, because I'm big on this, you did the conversation properly where you did not interrupt him. You passed the ball to him, you let him finish completely, then he passed the ball back to you, then you talk. That's how good conversation, that's a dialogue. Most people, when they're talking, they're thinking about what I'm going to say, sure saying, and then you almost jump in before they're finished and say, well, what about this, what about this? So you let him finish, then you talk, then you finish, then you talk. So that was good dialogue. That's the proper way to do it, just like passing a ball back and forth. That was excellent, and I'm doing some of the review here. Yes, all the questions you asked were open-ended questions, which is important. And if any of you are in sales, which a lot of us are, you never want to ask a question where they can say yes or no, because it's the end of the conversation. Do you have any children? Yes. Then you have to go, well, how about telling me about them, or something like that. So that was great. I thought that was good.
Any additional feedback in the last 45 seconds?
Actually, I on kind of improving things, the one thing I would have actually liked more, and I know we were in a kind of constrained time frame, but I would have loved to had a little bit more of an opportunity to ask you some questions.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I think that would help you gauge my interest level and engagement as well. So.
I appreciate that you were interested in
I would tag onto that as well to say, to give him a bit of take a pause for a moment to give him an opportunity to interject a question. You looked very comfortable, like you'd known each other, but you also had a slight bit of nervousness, and I think that was in the peppering the question back. You didn't hand back and forth well, like Blake said, but I think you maybe got started sooner, which prevented him an opportunity to ask you some details. It's good.
I think one thing too, Dave, when you were kind of made yourself vulnerable in the beginning and said, this is hard for me a lot too. I think maybe it enabled Robert to open up a little bit more to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good technique, I think, with people too, to say, I had these, it's hard for me, what about you, that type of stuff.
I reflect or echo Monica also on this well-thought conversation, like when you mentally prepared like what you are going to ask, you might be avoiding a lot of conflict scenarios. Right? There are better ways to put a question where you can get a reactive answer, then you are preparing for an outcome with a well-thought question, you can get the same result.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. I thought, I put in there, I thought you looked a little apprehensive, and you even mentioned it, thinking about your questions that you want to ask them ahead of time. It didn't, in this environment, you're doing a project, I understand that's hard. It would be interesting to see you go up there totally unprepared like we are when we run into somebody or a stranger and start talking, and just stay on the rules, which are don't let him finish before you talk, use open-ended questions, be sincerely interested, and have no prepared thoughts or manual or anything. It would be interesting to see that. But I thought it was an excellent job. Excellent job.
One thing that I liked was you asked him a question, let him finish the question, and then you also took some interest to that question and you answered it yourself from your side as well. So it was like a two-way conversation. Even though Robert did not got too much of opportunity to ask question, but whatever question you asked, you answered that as well. So it was a more of a two-way conversation because of that.
I think that's our time, right, Randy? Thank you all. Appreciate it.